The law of assumption is the silent force shaping every moment of your life. It does not shout, it does not insist, it does not negotiate with circumstances. It simply responds to whatever you dare to accept as true. Long before anything appears in the physical world, it is born in the quiet chambers of your inner mind, where you alone decide what is real and what is possible. The world seems to move around you, but in truth it moves because of you. Every event, every encounter, every breakthrough is a reflection of the assumptions you have allowed to take root within your consciousness, whether deliberately or unconsciously. To understand the law of assumption is to understand that nothing external has the power to dictate your fate unless you accept it as part of your inner truth. You are not reacting to life, life is reacting to you. The circumstances you see today are nothing but crystallized versions of old beliefs that you entertained yesterday. And the moment you change your assumption, the moment you boldly declare a new inner reality, the outer world begins to rearrange itself in ways that may appear miraculous to the untrained eye. But there is no miracle here, only law. A law as precise, predictable, and obedient as gravity, but infinitely more profound, because it mirrors the very nature of your imagination. There comes a time when you must stop arguing with what is and start assuming what can be. You cannot manifest a life you do not first accept within. You cannot attract abundance while assuming lack. You cannot call in love while assuming abandonment. You cannot create success while assuming unworthiness. The law does not respond to your words, your wishes, or your desperate pleas. It responds to what you quietly accept as reality. The world sees your actions, but the law sees your assumptions. And it is your assumptions that carry the power. If you desire a new life, you must first build it in the unseen. You must become the version of yourself who already has what you want. Not in the future, not someday, but now, in your inner state, in your imagination, in your consciousness. Feel the reality of your desire as though it were already yours. Live mentally in the end. Walk in the assumption that your wish is fulfilled, and watch how life bends, shifts, and aligns to match your internal certainty. The outer world cannot resist the inner world when the inner world is held with conviction. There is a hidden confidence that emerges when you operate through assumption. Suddenly, you no longer beg for change. You command it through your inner acceptance. You no longer chase outcomes, you embody them. You no longer fear delays. You understand that the bridge of events is forming perfectly to carry you to your imagined destination. And even when the world shows you evidence to the contrary, you remain unmoved because you know the truth is not what you see. The truth is what you assume. Every transformation begins the moment you dare to assume a new identity. When you assume you are blessed, opportunities emerge. When you assume you are loved, connections deepen. When you assume you are chosen, doors open. When you assume you are successful, pathways reveal themselves that once seemed invisible. It is never the world holding you back. It is the assumptions within you that you have not yet dared to upgrade. So step into the power that has always belonged to you. Assume what you desire as though it is already done. Let the feeling of fulfillment rise within you. Carry it in your thoughts, in your tone, in your posture, in your silent expectations. And as you persist, you will witness the hidden law behind every manifestation reveal its brilliance in your life. Not through chance, not through effort, but through the simple, sovereign act of assuming your desire into being. The law of assumption moves quietly, yet it shapes everything. Once you begin to live from it deliberately, you realize that nothing in your world stands alone, nothing is random, nothing arrives without a cause rooted in some inner acceptance. People will tell you that life is unpredictable, that circumstances are outside your control, that fate is decided by forces too large for you to influence. But they say this only because they have not yet discovered that their assumptions are the blueprint of their experiences. Every time you accept a thought as true, every time you allow a feeling to settle in as your reality, you are sending out an instruction to the unseen power that governs manifestation. And this power responds with perfect precision, arranging the outer world according to the inner pattern. To embody this law is to reclaim authorship of your life, not by fighting circumstances, not by pushing against what you dislike, not by wrestling with obstacles, but by withdrawing your attention from anything that contradicts your chosen assumption. When you understand this, you stop arguing with appearances. You stop explaining why things look impossible. You stop giving your energy to limitations. Instead, you turn inward. You select the state you desire to occupy, and you hold it with a quiet certainty until the world must conform. This inner discipline is the true work, and once mastered, it becomes effortless. Like breathing, like walking, like observing, it becomes your natural way of being. There is a profound shift that occurs when you stop asking whether your desire will manifest and begin assuming that it already has. You feel a sense of relief, a deep calm, a serene confidence. You stop checking for signs because you no longer need them. You stop doubting timelines because you know everything is unfolding in divine order. You no longer live as someone waiting for life to change. You live as someone who already embodies the change. This is the secret difference between wishing and creating. Wishing is passive, uncertain, dependent. Creating through assumption is active, intentional, authoritative. When you assume the end, you no longer vibrate with the energy of lack, you align yourself with fulfillment. Every desire you hold contains within it the very instructions for its own manifestation. The desire is not a sign of something missing. It is a sign of something already prepared for you in the unseen. Desire is guidance. Desire is invitation. Desire is the universe speaking to you in the language of possibility. And when you assume that this desire is already fulfilled, you unlock the path that carries you to its physical expression. The law of assumption is the bridge between the invisible and the visible, between the imagined self and the embodied self. But to master this law, you must become selective with the thoughts you entertain. Every thought has a feeling attached to it, and every feeling is an assumption forming. When you dwell in thoughts of fear, doubt, or unworthiness, you are assuming a reality in which your desire cannot flourish. When you dwell in thoughts of confidence, gratitude, and certainty, you are assuming a reality in which your desire must come to life. This is why the inner state is everything. Your inner dialogue is your creative tool. Your mental conversations are constantly writing your future. Your tone, your expectations, your silent beliefs, all of them are seeds planted in the soil of your consciousness. People often believe that their past determines who they are. They look at old experiences, old failures, old rejections, and they assume these memories define them. But the law of assumption is not concerned with your past. It is concerned only with what you are assuming right now. Your past has no power unless you keep breathing life into it with fresh assumptions. The moment you decide to assume something new, the past loses its grip. You are reborn into a new identity. And as you persist in this new assumption, the world begins to mirror it. People treat you differently. Opportunities arise where none existed before. Situations shift as if they were waiting for your permission to move. You realize that nothing was ever fixed. Everything was waiting on your assumption. Living from the law of assumption means you no longer measure your progress by what you see. The physical world is always a step behind your inner world. It is slow, dense, reflective. It cannot keep up with the speed of imagination. So when you change your assumption, you must remain loyal to the new state, even if the outer world has not yet caught up. This is the part most people struggle with: persistence. They assume something new for a day or two, but when the outer world shows no immediate evidence, they fall back into old assumptions. They return to believing what is instead of believing what will be. But manifestation belongs to those who persist, not those who waver. Persistence is not effort. It is not force. It is simply remaining faithful to your chosen assumption. It is returning to the end result whenever doubt tries to pull you away. It is choosing to dwell in the state of fulfillment rather than the state of lack. And the beautiful thing is that the more you persist, the easier it becomes. The mind adapts. The new assumption becomes familiar. It becomes comfortable. Soon it becomes automatic. And once the assumption becomes natural to you, the outer world must reflect it with absolute certainty. There is immense power in the feeling of already done. When you walk through life as someone who has already received what they desire, you move differently. You speak differently. You make decisions from a place of abundance instead of fear. You interpret circumstances from a place of stability instead of insecurity. You do not respond to challenges as someone trying to achieve a goal. You respond as someone who already has. This shift in identity is the core of manifestation. Your world mirrors who you assume yourself to be. Imagine waking up each day and stepping into the version of yourself who already lives the life you desire. Imagine thinking from that state, feeling from that state, acting from that state. You are not pretending, you are creating. You are aligning your consciousness with the frequency of fulfillment. And in doing so, you send a clear signal to the universe. This is my reality, this is who I am. This is what I assume to be true. And the universe, bound by law, begins to assemble the pieces. There is no desire too big for assumption, no dream too distant, no goal too impossible. The world you see today once lived in someone's imagination. Every invention, every breakthrough, every miracle began with someone assuming something could be real even when no physical evidence existed. The difference between those who manifest and those who do not is not luck. It is the courage to hold an assumption long enough for it to materialize. It is the willingness to stay loyal to the invisible. To truly embody this law, you must treat your imagination as the creative workshop of your life. What you do in imagination is more important than what you do in the physical world, because the physical world only echoes what imagination has already declared. When you imagine something vividly, when you feel it deeply, when you accept it wholeheartedly, you imprint it upon your subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind, once impressed, works tirelessly to bring it into physical form. It does not question. It does not doubt. It does not analyze. It simply obeys. Your role is to choose your assumptions. The subconscious mind's role is to manifest them, and the universe's role is to shape reality in accordance with them. This is the sacred partnership that governs all creation. Every time you visualize your desired outcome, you enter the state of fulfillment. Every time you mentally rehearse a new reality, you strengthen the assumption that it is already yours. Every time you feel gratitude for what has not yet appeared, you confirm your faith in the unseen. You build a vibrational momentum that becomes irresistible. Some people wait for external conditions to change before they allow themselves to feel differently. They say, when I get the job, I'll feel successful. When I find love, I'll feel worthy. When I get money, I'll feel secure. But the law of assumption works in reverse. You must feel successful before the job arrives. You must feel loved before the relationship appears. You must feel secure before the abundance manifests. Feeling is the secret bridge. Feeling is the language of assumption. Feeling is the magnet that draws the unseen into form. The moment you adopt the feeling of "it is done," everything begins to move toward you. People are guided to you. Ideas land effortlessly. Synchronicities unfold, paths open. You may not see how it will happen, but you don't need to. The how belongs to the unseen intelligence that orchestrates every manifestation. Your only responsibility is to maintain the assumption. This law is not reserved for the spiritually advanced or the exceptionally disciplined. It belongs to everyone. It is operating right now in every person's life, whether they know it or not. When someone assumes they are unlucky, life gives them more reasons to believe it. When someone assumes they are always overlooked, they continue to experience rejection. When someone assumes they are meant for greatness, opportunities unfold that match that inner truth. Assumption is the root of all experience. It does not discriminate. It does not judge. It simply fulfills. And once you embrace this, you become unstoppable. You stop waiting for permission. You stop looking for validation. You stop seeking signs. You become your own sign. You become your own authority. You become the origin of your reality. You rise each day knowing that you can choose a new assumption at any moment. You can rewrite any story. You can dissolve any limitation. You can create any future. There is nothing outside you that holds power over your inner state unless you grant it authority. Life begins to feel lighter when you live through assumption. You no longer feel trapped by circumstances. You no longer feel at war with yourself. You no longer feel helpless in the face of challenges. You understand that challenges are only temporary shadows cast by old assumptions. And the moment you replace them with new ones, the shadows disappear. The law of assumption allows you to walk through the world with an inner certainty, a steady knowing, a calm confidence. Even when others cannot see what you are creating, you see it clearly. Even when others doubt, you remain anchored. Even when nothing seems to be happening, you trust that everything is happening behind the scenes. This trust is magnetic. It draws your desire to you with precision. And as you continue to inhabit the feeling of the wish fulfilled, as you continue to assume the identity of the version of yourself who already has everything you desire, you will watch your world transform in ways that leave you in awe. Not because the world suddenly became magical, but because you finally learned to use the law that was always shaping your life. The law of assumption is not something you visit for a moment and then abandon. It is a state of being you gradually sink into until it becomes the foundation of how you interpret life. The more you practice assuming your desired reality, the more natural it becomes, until one day you realize you no longer need to remind yourself of it. You simply live it. It becomes the lens through which you see the world, the filter through which you process experiences, the silent choice behind every reaction. You begin to notice how powerful your inner world truly is. You recognize that every shift you make within yourself subtly reorders the world around you, as though the universe has no choice but to reflect your inner acceptance. At first, the mind may resist this idea. It is conditioned to believe that external events hold more power than thoughts. It is conditioned to respond to appearances as if they are final. But appearances are never final. They are simply delayed reflections of old assumptions. When you understand this, you stop taking the current circumstances as truth. You stop being intimidated by obstacles. You stop interpreting delays as denials. Instead, you look at the world with a quiet confidence, knowing it must eventually yield to your inner state. This knowledge is freeing. It removes the pressure. It dissolves fear. It gives you permission to relax into the feeling of having your desire. The more you relax into the feeling, the more aligned you become with the version of yourself who already has what you seek. You begin to think like them, speak like them, choose like them, expect like them. This internal shift is subtle at first, but profound in its effects. Your desires stop feeling distant. They stop feeling like dreams you hope to reach someday. They feel present. They feel natural. They feel familiar. And once something becomes familiar to your consciousness, the outer world will inevitably bring it to you. Your assumptions form your identity, and your identity forms your destiny. You cannot outperform your self-concept. You cannot manifest something consistently that contradicts who you assume you are. This is why inner work is essential. If you want wealth, you must assume yourself to be someone who naturally attracts wealth. If you want love, you must assume yourself to be someone who is worthy of love. If you want success, you must assume yourself to be someone who is capable, confident, and chosen. The world cannot give you what you deny within yourself. It can only echo the story you tell yourself in silence. Many people try to manifest from a place of lack. They hold the desire, but the assumption behind the desire is, I don't have this yet. And because assumption is stronger than desire, the outer world mirrors the lack rather than the wish. The law does not respond to longing, it responds to internal acceptance. This is why the feeling of already being is so powerful. It dissolves the energy of wanting and replaces it with the energy of having. The moment you shift from wanting to having, you release the very resistance that was keeping your desire away. There is a quiet authority in the person who assumes the end. They do not chase. They do not beg. They do not plead. They remain steady, calm, poised. They speak with certainty. They walk with clarity. They hold their inner world with conviction. They know that manifestation is not about proving anything to anyone. It is about embodying a state so consistently that reality has no choice but to reflect it. The more you live this way, the more you notice how people around you respond differently. They treat you according to your self-assumption. If you assume yourself to be respected, they begin to respect you. If you assume yourself to be valued, they recognize your worth. If you assume yourself to be powerful, they see your strength without you saying a word. The world reads your energy, not your intentions. Your energy is shaped by your assumptions. You cannot fake confidence, but you can assume it. And when you assume it, it becomes real. There will be moments when the old reality tries to pull you back, when doubts whisper, when appearances contradict your intention. At those moments, your loyalty will be tested. But these moments are not setbacks, they are opportunities to strengthen your assumption. Every time you choose your desired reality over your fear, you build inner power. Every time you reaffirm your assumption in the face of contradiction, you deepen your identity. Every time you persist when it would be easier to crumble, you rewrite the script of your life. This persistence is not exhausting. It is not mental effort. It is simply the gentle returning of your mind to the state you've chosen. It is like bringing your attention back to the flame of a candle after it wanders. You do not scold yourself. You simply return. You return again and again until the returning becomes natural. And one day, without realizing it, you wake up fully anchored in your assumption, unable to imagine life any other way. What once felt like a stretch now feels like truth. What once felt like hope now feels like identity. What once felt like a dream now feels like your baseline. And because the outer world is always behind the inner world, it eventually rises to meet this new standard. Assumptions do not remain silent. They radiate through your actions, your tone, your presence. They determine how you show up in conversations, how you handle challenges, how you make decisions. A person who assumes success responds to setbacks differently than someone who assumes failure. A person who assumes abundance does not panic over temporary lack. A person who assumes love does not crumble at the first sign of conflict. Assumptions create stability. They anchor you emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Every great transformation begins with a single decision, the decision to assume a new version of yourself. Not someday, not when circumstances change. Now, in this moment, the decision is internal, but it carries external consequences. When you decide to step into the identity of the person you desire to be, you shift the entire trajectory of your life. The world senses this shift. Opportunities that once bypassed you begin to gravitate toward you. People who could not see your value suddenly recognize it. Experiences you once believed were out of reach begin to unfold naturally. Your assumption is your silent command to the universe. When you assume a new reality, you are declaring, "This is who I am now." And the universe always supports identity. The mind may question at times. It may ask how the desire will come. It may try to calculate, predict, or control the path. But the law of assumption does not require you to know the path. It only requires that you trust the end. The path reveals itself as you remain loyal to your inner state. Every step appears at the perfect time, guided by an intelligence far greater than logic. The how is none of your concern. Your only responsibility is the assumption. There is something incredibly soothing about releasing the need to figure everything out. You no longer force outcomes. You no longer overthink decisions. You no longer operate from fear or urgency. Instead, you move from inspiration, from intuition, from alignment. You take only the actions that feel natural to the version of yourself you have assumed. You no longer question whether you deserve your desire. You assume you do. You no longer wonder if your desire will come. You assume it is coming. You no longer doubt if you are capable. You assume you are. As days pass, you begin to sense that your inner world and your outer world are not separate. They are connected, woven together by the thread of assumption. Everything outside is simply a projection of what exists inside. When you hold an assumption long enough, the external world cannot resist it. It bends, it shifts, it rearranges. It reconfigures itself in ways you could never consciously orchestrate. Synchronicities multiply. Coincidences align. People play their roles perfectly. Opportunities arrive with uncanny timing. What once felt like a miracle becomes your new normal. You become a creator, not a reactor. You become a master of your inner world. You become someone who understands that the greatest power lies not in controlling circumstances, but in controlling assumptions. You realize that life becomes simple, almost effortless, when you assume the end and trust the unfolding. The mind may struggle in the beginning because it is used to relying on evidence. But with repetition, with persistence, with faith in your inner authority, the new assumption takes root. And once it becomes natural, the physical world follows. This law never fails. It never falters. It never forgets your instructions. It is always listening to your assumptions, always responding, always reflecting. The question is not whether the law is working. The question is what you are assuming. And when you take responsibility for your assumptions, you reclaim the power that has always belonged to you. When you finally embrace the truth that your assumptions are the architects of your reality, you stop waiting for life to give you permission and instead become the author of every chapter ahead. Nothing in your world is more powerful than the story you choose to accept within yourself. The moment you dare to assume the highest version of your desire as already fulfilled, you unlock a force that moves mountains in silence and reshapes destiny without effort. So stand firmly in the end you have claimed. Hold the feeling of your fulfilled desire as though it is the only truth that exists. Let the world adjust. Let circumstances bend. Let the universe rise to match the certainty of your inner state. For when you persist in the assumption of your chosen reality, life has no choice but to bow before it. And what once seemed impossible becomes the only thing that makes sense.